Now I'm excited to introduce our venture capital panel. So the topic is investing trends in businesses powered by visual technologies. And we're honored to have Alex Konrad, senior editor at Forbes, to moderate this panel in addition to Reshma, Nikhil, Sarah, and Nathan. I will pass it over to Alex to take it away and take charge. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
All right, we just got some smart presentations, so now we can just talk VC, the easy stuff, right? We're joined by Nathan Benaich from LDV Capital, which is an AI-focused VC firm. Sarah Guo, who's the founder of Conviction, an early-stage VC firm, also focused on AI. Nikhil Sachdev is managing director at Inside Partners, which is a multi-stage firm, private equity firm, does AI, does everything. You guys probably know it. And then Reshma Sohoni, a Midas stalwart and co-founder of Seedcamp, a seed stage VC firm. So awesome to have Nathan, Sarah, Nikhil, Reshma here. We're talking investing trends in AI. All of you obviously were crypto investors until 2 months ago, right?
2 weeks, about 2 weeks.
2 weeks, great. So rather than give like long bios, I thought it might be helpful for each of you to just tell the audience one or two companies that you're spending the most time working with right now, broadly in the AI world, just so we can get a sense of kind of where you're spending the most of your focus or kind of like hanging out the most with entrepreneurs. So if you want to maybe give an indicative example, I think that's more fun than like the long bio. So Nathan, why don't we start with you?
Sure, yeah. So I'll highlight one in vertical software and another one in bio, which I'm super psyched about. So the first one's called Intensai, which is a New York-based company. They do enterprise health and safety. So basically protecting a lot of blue-collar workers in manufacturing industrial environments that unfortunately suffer injuries as a result of dangerous working environments or mismanipulation of machines and things of that nature. So they plug into existing security cameras that are in these facilities and then instrument them with logic applied as computer vision that detects unsafe events. And the second one is called Valence Discovery, which is in designing small molecule drugs. So I did my undergrad and grad school in cancer research, and that was 15 years ago or so now. And like the space, the evolution of the space over that time has been insane. So, now you can use a lot of these generative models and graph learning and other fancy things to be much more prescriptive with how you want medications to look and behave in a way that will, I think, materially reduce the cost of medicines and get better ones into the clinic faster. So they're just one of many companies that I think are making big impacts in this space.
Very cool. Sarah, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I think I'll talk about the sort of more applied side, and then a large ambitious consumer play. So Seek is a company that we co-led the seed in, and it allows you to do natural language queries on your business data. So any business person can ask questions of their data warehouse instead of going through a traditional flow, which is like ask somebody who can write code, write SQL and Python, and leverage a bunch of the code generation capabilities and other things that these models can do now. And so seeing really exciting traction with that company, and just think it's like a great unlock for companies. And then on the core modeling side, Inflection is a company that was started by Mustafa Suleyman, the founder of DeepMind, Reid Hoffman and Karen, and a scientist over from DeepMind, and it's a core research organization focused on making AIs more human, which I think is a very admirable mission.
Very cool. Nikhil?
Yeah, two. One at the early stage, one more at the growth stage. So Wizard is an application-led company that we invested in. I'm on the board of, actually, with Evan from LDV, which is how I've gotten to know Evan and LDV, which has been a real pleasure. Thank you, Evan, for having us here. So Wizard, in a nutshell, is using AI to enable design, and now has actually launched a pretty interesting tool set to do kind of Gen AI for design. In doing so, they're helping to democratize design, making it more accessible for users of all types, including business users, to participate and create in the design process. Have had really fantastic technical team out of Europe, really strong organic PLG-led growth. And then the second company is called Viz.ai. They're using AI within the hospital to do analysis on medical images and then enable better care coordination amongst physicians in the hospital.
Got it. We're seeing a real breadth of companies here. Reshma, why don't you take us home on the focuses?
Super. And I won't mention Viz, but that's definitely one of ours as well from early on. But I was thinking about this and looking back in our, sadly, I didn't use GPT to look at our data, but thinking about, I mean, we had an event in 2016. It was like, AI is here. Here we are in 2023, right? And so and UiPath was probably one of our latest stage now, but those early sort of aha moments on computer vision and kind of where it starts to get to. But looking back at that first event, like AI was definitely automation intelligence, not artificial intelligence. I think now where we are, right? So that was AI 1.0 for us, is a lot of that automation intelligence. And so within that, UiPath, Reinfer, which was acquired by UiPath, Rossum, which is kind of a mid-stage company, not quite late stage yet. But then more recently, we've been doing a lot. I think I'll mention a couple of companies. I mean, Synthesia, I think, is presenting, right? Really interesting, and obviously kind of synthetic media and such an advancement in that world. And currently with Synthesia, using it in a controlled, powerful way by thousands of organizations and thousands of people. But for them, also challenges on when it doesn't, it's not controlled, right? And because it is a very powerful tool. So Synthesia with LDV, another one is Garden with LDV as well, which is really this intersection of AI and the real world. So we've been able to look at plants and talk to them, but we're never sure, maybe like pets as well, whether they can actually understand us and can, talk back and see us. So Garden has hardware, algorithm, software management capacity all in one, so that plants can actually now talk back. And we can kind of get into a dialogue with them about their growth needs. And so collectively, it's about more efficient nutritional food production, right? Because that is, so it's climate change, it's agriculture, it's intelligence meets the real world. So yeah, three examples there.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, the breadth of companies there is really interesting. And also, I know these are investments that you all made, at least a lot of them a while ago, which kind of brings me to my first general question, which is that this is such an interesting moment where the public has really, caught some of the excitement of, ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion and all these tools that are kind of consumer friendly and fun to use. And we're seeing the big tech companies obviously racing to integrate tools into all of their software suites. What is that like, as an investor today, when there's this critical mass of interest? Does that make your job harder because now everyone is swarming into your space, or is it exciting? Sarah, I'm going to start with you. Kind of, what is your current feeling now that this is a year where AI is the hot topic?
Yeah. So at risk of re-inviting the crypto jokes, like, we're still quite early, right? I think this is like maybe inning 2. And whenever, as you said, there's this flood of interest as like generalist investors enter the chat, that kind of capital inflow, it causes prices to rise irrationally. But most technology cycles, like, I don't think we're just going to get like monotonic increase in capability and success of all companies. We think there's going to be a decade of great opportunities. And so I think it's like a wonderful thing that with capital, it does encourage like more risk-taking and experimentation.
I see Nathan nodding. Would you agree, Nathan, or would you add anything to Sarah's point there?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that the other point is that there's like a ton of market education that's been happening basically as a result of ChatGPT and other consumer grade AI products that everybody can play with. And so when you look back like 10 years, when you're an AI company trying to sell your product, you had to do a ton of like educating your customer as to like how these systems work, why they work, what's needed to make them work really successfully. And so that's all done for you now. which is great, because then you're pushing more on an open door rather than like a door that doesn't want you there in the first place, which I think is quite major. And I think the second thing is it's also attracted a ton of new participants in the space, whereas before it used to be populated by master's and PhD grade individuals who are running companies, and was kind of out of the scope of anybody who didn't have those kinds of technical chops. But now there's like the classic like app developer and like front end person that's coming in and playing with these tools because they're like good enough out of the box, so they don't have to do 2-3 years of R&D before they can test a product hypothesis and realize it was wrong and then shut down the company. Now you can almost like iterate with AI capabilities at the speed of SaaS, which I think is very exciting.
I wanted to, I think to Alex, your question on is it harder? Like I do think it's harder though, because this democratization, to pick up on Nathan's point about it's even at the kind of non-technical layer already, right? So it does feel like everyone's focusing on this new thing, and it's not just in R&D labs right now. It's not just sort of 50 most talented people in the world building something. There is this, everyone seems to be coming at X idea with generative tech, generative AI. And alongside that, you have this interesting realm of the layman, like that, who cares nothing about technology, who cares about the problems they have. So, my nanny, like in December, was like, hey, by the way, I found these recipes, or I found these play activities for the 4-year-old. I was like, what? So, but that's amazing to see. She doesn't care what the tech is. She just wants the answers of what to do on a boring Saturday with the kid, right? And run out of like her own ideas on it. So it's rarely do you get that happening, where you have that user experience being able to connect with deeply technical, or maybe many superficial kind of folks also trying to enter the space. So it's a very interesting but challenging moment to find the real signal from noise.
Yeah, Nikhil, I have a question. From the insight perspective, have you all seen companies making real revenue and kind of seeing that sort of scale use on the enterprise side? Because obviously Reshma was just talking about how we've clearly gotten to that nanny level of consumer interest. But one question I think a lot of people ask me is, who's making real money here? Like how much is this just sort of exuberance and excitement, but we have products that are still in beta or still kind of, pricing to be determined or just new, and no one, is anyone actually making real money? So curious if you could help take that one.
Yeah, I think that there are companies that are Gen AI first, in our portfolio and outside of our portfolio. In our portfolio, I think Jasper is a great example that have scaled to meaningful revenue very, very quickly. I think there are also companies that are using AI in the back end, but they're not necessarily leading with AI as the message. Viz.ai is a great example of that. What they're leading with is, how am I delivering real meaningful value to the hospital and to the patient and to the doctor in a clinical setting? And AI is enabling that. But it's really about the productivity and the value prop and real results. And I think that's a trend that we're probably likely to see. I think AI is a really, really powerful tool that is unlocking our collective imaginations. But ultimately, it's around what's the durable value prop for an enterprise or for a consumer. And when you're delivering for the enterprise or the consumer, I think you can scale really big businesses. And we're seeing examples of that. I think we're going to see more.
One other question I have is, we talk a lot about kind of the investing side of VC, but obviously you all do a lot for your portfolio that is not just writing a check. So, Nathan or Sarah, I'm curious if you could maybe just give us a little bit of a sense of the talent side of this, and whether you see VCs being able to be helpful, actually getting top talent to these exciting AI companies, because it seems like there are so many. And we see top researchers kind of hopping from one to another, that at least for an outsider, it can be a little hard to keep up. And so I'm curious kind of how you guys can be most helpful there.
Yeah, I think you're pointing out kind of an interesting two dynamics. One is like the set of people who know how to train or fine tune specific types of large models today is like a pretty limited set. And transparently, like Google and DeepMind and FAIR and OpenAI, to name sort of four of the largest organizations, they're willing to pay really outsized salaries for certain researchers today, right? And so that's a specific dynamic, but it's not a new one that I suppose like entrepreneurs have had to fight. Like that was true of like cloud talent when that was a new thing. And so I'd say like there's a lot of learning in the ecosystem going on right now. And we continue to recruit people who want to work on applications outside of research as well. I'd say the other piece that is just interesting and like where we think we can really help people on both sides is there's this asymmetry of information where like unlike anything I've ever seen before in technology, you have new capabilities happening all the time in research. And the pipeline of like that being applicable to applications that you might start a commercial company around is like, timeline is very short, right? Paper comes out and people are experimenting with it on the same day. And I think that's super exciting. But the reality is like 90% of that audience on both sides, research and like product entrepreneurially oriented engineering teams, they're really learning about the other side, right? Like where the commercial opportunity is, how to interact with customers, how to recruit machine learning talent, how to work with these models. And so I think there's a lot of matchmaking that we invest time in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with all that stuff. And then I would say the other thing is because it is like relatively noisy right now, and then there's a lot of like players coming into the space, I think talent that's looking to make a wise decision looks for nodes in the network to provide like quality, impartial, like well opinionated views on like this is legit and this is not legit. And so that's where like I just view that like specialism really pays off in that regard. Because you can be seen as somebody that like knows their stuff and is not going to just refer you around their portfolio just because that's how the thing works. And I've also just noticed like a real uptick in inbound from like some of the big technology companies where people are like properly frustrated not being able to ship products or frustrated with the way that products have been shipped and really want to go do something new. And yeah, just being able to try and be like a talent router or talent agent in that space is like really, really quite exciting because you get to live vicariously through all these amazing things that people can be working on nowadays that, yeah, unfortunately I can't be working on myself.
Well, it's interesting. Jasper was created by a marketer, not an AI expert. Yeah. It feels like a lot of the sort of big model companies here were obviously researchers and maybe more technical people, but we're also seeing a bunch of AI startups now being created that aren't necessarily DeepMind alums or OpenAI alums. Reshma, at the early stage, when you're thinking about kind of who is a credible founder here, who gets you excited, is there a kind of persona you're looking for, or how do you kind of think about who can really have credibility in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we tend to gravitate much more. Again, we're pretty trying to be as capital intensity light investor as we can. Garden is definitely an exception for us, and very defining ourselves and showing to founders to be super sort of software led. So I think for us, we still begin with where is the edge? Where is that technical edge, first mover edge, the defensibility, network effects that are going to give you that. Even if you don't have it today, it'll come in time. So for us, it still starts that way. But I think, Alex, what you said about willingness to pay ultimately, it's like, hey, we're not a researcher. We're not funding a research organization. We're not funding a charitable organization as such. So this will become a commercial business. And so connecting that person or early team, whether it's that founder talent itself, but who is thinking about a beautiful product that actually nobody cares at the end about whether it was, quantum, AI, whatever. It was just, I just need to solve my problems faster, hopefully cheaper, in a better way. And where is going to be that willingness to pay? So I do think a lot more attention on, getting that connectivity of talent between that commercial product interface talent with the hardcore, look at this, only 100 of us can kind of build this, right, and do this. So that's what we're looking a lot at. And we, again, we're thinking about sort of 5-year journey. We're going to be most active in your first 2 to 3 years with you, then someone else. So we're, thinking about, will Nikhil be interested in this company, right, down the road? And so we're thinking about those downstream investors as well as downstream talent. So if you look at UiPath's senior management today, obviously it was not there in 2015, 2018 even. I mean, it's a completely new group of people, right? But they're the right people for a public business. So we're also thinking about that kind of 10+ year journey, and therefore the kind of complement of a team and the ability of those researchers to either, bring them on themselves or be open to sort of going on that journey. Really, really important to try to assess.
One of the things that we've been really successful in the early days with is where there is some serendipitous partnership between like domain experts and people working on the state of the art. Right. So we're lucky to be investors in this company called Harvey, where, Gabe, co-founder, was AI PhD and worked at Google DeepMind FAIR, the Facebook research organization. And his roommate, Winston, was, rising star lawyer at a white shoe law firm who hacked with GPT-3, right? And so I think, they've figured out, because they have this native understanding of the workflows, you can do end-to-end 95% of a first-year legal associate's work. And for anybody who has, interacted with, young lawyers or done that themselves, it's a pretty brutal year of the job, right? And so that doesn't obviate the need for reasoning argument, litigation in court, but a lot of the research and summarization, it really does take a bunch of domain knowledge to think about how to make the quality work. And so either because we're lucky to run into people or because we're trying to create those connections, I think there's a combination of those capabilities that is really magical.
That's awesome. Okay, so I want everyone to just quickly give me a score from 1 to 10. And then hopefully we will get some different answers when you hear the question, and you guys can, go back and forth a little bit, so I can catch my breath, of course. But my question is, as we kind of think, trying to put a little bit of a bow on the current state of affairs before we move to the future, how concerned on a scale of 1 to 10 are you all about the biggest 5 tech companies as you define them, just taking any interesting innovations here and using their distribution advantage to just kind of consolidate control? We've obviously seen Google and Microsoft announce a ton of products. I expect Amazon and Apple to make some moves as well. Meta, of course, Jan LeCun is tweeting a lot, but I think he's building stuff too. So maybe starting with Reshma and then going to Nikhil and then Nathan and Sarah, what would be your kind of concern of big tech sucking out the oxygen from a 1 to a 10?
Yeah. Wait, is 10 high? 1 low?
We can say 10 is highest concern. Yeah.
10 is pack up and go home.
Yeah. 10 is go back to crypto. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say different ratings. I think if you're building, I've talked about capital intensity, and I think building horizontal, I'm much more worried, right? Especially if you combine those two things. Google, Microsoft, they're just really great at kind of crappy products. So I worry about that, and in 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. And then I'm really not worried at, more like a 3 on connecting that horizontal kind of crappy experience and accuracy and all that with your in-house proprietary data, in-house knowledge. I think that I'm much less worried about, and crafting an end-to-end better experience. So maybe to shortcut that, those serving enterprises, medium-sized businesses, I am much less worried about. But yeah, generic kind of crappy-ish, I'm very worried about any, backing our companies that are gonna do that. We'll still do it, but that's where I worry more.
All right, Nikhil.
Yeah, Alex, I'd say a 4. I mean, I think there's reasons to be concerned, but I'm not so concerned that I'd pack up and go home. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation here and a lot of standalone durable companies be built that are net new. If I take OpenAI and make that separate from maybe the big 5 largest techs, I in some ways think that's an example of how you can have innovation in this category without being an incumbent tech company of scale. I think now the question is, well, will OpenAI be one of those incumbents? And I think there's a lot of reasons why they're emerging as an early ecosystem winner. I think with the big techs, like they have advantages in capital, they have advantages in talent, they have advantages in distribution. And I think companies like Microsoft especially have advantages in having a bundle that they're selling to an existing customer base that's an enterprise buyer. But all that said, I think we are going to see net new creation here. And whoever is building, though, has to have this balance of playing offense and defense. And I think in the verticals, especially, you may have unique advantages to build domain-specific applications that aren't envisioned by some of these, larger tech companies. And I think Sarah with Harvey is a great example. I think Viz and the med tech space is a great example of that.
Awesome. And as Nathan goes, so we have someone in the audience asking if your answers are influenced by the amount of money it costs to train models here, and if there's just sort of a capital constraint to innovation here. But Nathan, where are you on the spectrum?
Yeah, I would say I'm no more bullish or scared than prior platform shifts or technology innovations. I'd say to add on what was put already. I think big tech companies still have this issue of if a particular product line doesn't generate more than $1 billion in revenue or something, it's not really worth making it a strategic priority. And there's plenty of companies that can be founded that absorb that revenue. And I think also a lot of the big tech companies generally lack these subject matter experts that are the bread and butter for vertical software companies. I do think that I'm a bit more nervous and have been for a while on developer tools for machine learning, as that landscape is like quicksand, and generally, I feel anything that's an on-ramp onto compute is generally a bit dangerous. There are a few rare exceptions, but I would proceed with trepidation there. But anything that's not in plain sight, obvious, first order use cases, I think is pretty safe to gun in.
I'm imagining how we draw a quicksand here, because that's a great visual. Sarah, what about you?
A 2. I think people love to talk about the strategy of this, and I talked to Sam this morning checking on whether or not they're going in a particular direction, because don't pick up pennies in front of a steamroller. Project what the big players care about, or ask them and project where general model research is going to go. And then if you don't have a huge advantage, fighting an execution machine that has a lot of researchers the way OpenAI does is not a good idea, right? But 90% of building an AI software company mostly is still building a software company. The last mile of AI is really hard. It's easy to demo. It's hard to change a workflow. And so I just think that the opportunity is really, really large. And if you are, mildly strategic about figuring out where you're not going to get run over, then you're fine. Or you're as fine as any startup, against the odds in any David and Goliath situation, right? On the question of cost, training foundation models is definitely expensive. Fine-tuning large models is also sort of expensive. To give you a sense of magnitude, we're in the let's say $100-200 million zone to train something like GPT-4. So it's not GDP of a country, but it's also not a seed investment normally, right? And bigger continues to be better from a reasoning perspective. But you have these opposing forces of it gets magnitudes cheaper to train the same thing once somebody has done it. because there's a lot of economic incentive to figure that out. The hardware does continue to get better. And then there's this open source movement of availability. And then like the idea that we feel pretty strongly that and this is the thing I was talking to Sam about, that small models that are focused are going to be used very broadly as well. There's this idea of like a student model, like train a small model from a large model. And there's lots of advantages to that. And so I think it's like not at all clear that you need to spend $150 million to do most things that are super valuable.
Got it. Sarah bringing the flex of fresh Sam Altman perspective today. Nikhil, no worries if you didn't talk to Sam today, but as we think about the future, where do you get excited on the 5 to 10 year time frame? We had a question in the audience if maybe people will look to other areas of AI that aren't LLM based, like whether it's some speech based stuff or computer vision stuff, but kind of what gets you excited about the future, and then we'll kind of turn that to each of the other panelists.
Well, just in a nod to OpenAI, like I'm pretty excited. We're not an investor, but I'm excited about that company, and I think they're very squarely in the right direction of travel. And I think there are a lot of benefits that they're going to inure both on the business enterprise side and their deeply technical capabilities, and the fact that they're the fastest growing consumer internet company basically ever, and I think they've really captured the imagination of a lot of people who are outside of technology. And then I think more from a category specific view, some of the areas that we're excited about, over the next 5 years, tooling. I think LLMs, are powerful, but I think the ability for engineers, developers, and other personas to interact with the LLMs and create, I think there's going to be a whole set of tooling that emerges. I think we're going to see some vertical specific LLMs or LLMs that can emerge to help us handle sensitive or regulated data. I think in the horizontal categories, we're really excited about applications that are enabling developer productivity and unlocking security applications. And then I think in the vertical space, there are two categories. I've been thinking a lot about. One is just life sciences and healthcare, and the second is supply chain and logistics. So some areas.
Very cool.
I do think that the one of the things that's really exciting, you drew this distinction between crypto and AI, and it was a joke, and I get that, is I think in crypto, you don't have, in the same way that you do in AI, just the imagination unlock around all the potential use cases. And I think we're at this period, especially over the last 6 months, where there's been such a rate of change that everyone is sitting around being like, wow, we could use this for this. And so we're just going to see a lot of creation around that.
Yeah, no, but by the way, I don't mean to bash crypto, but I do think that there are some founders who were building solutions looking for problems, and AI, we kind of have the opposite situation here, which is so exciting. Reshma, what gets you excited thinking 5 or 10 years out?
I think we still have such bigger problems. We have war, pestilence, like financial chaos, and so so I think thinking about investments like Garden, Ezra, Biz, much more personal. Like obesity is a problem. It's now a problem in France, where it really didn't used to be a problem, right? That's spreading as a problem. So, thinking a lot more about personal health, nutrition, climate, war over water, like water wars are coming, if they aren't already there. So, those are massive problems. And I think that's where the next 5 to 10 years, with currently, we're just helping ourselves write better. We're helping ourselves kind of do some of our workflows better. And I think what we're thinking about is, taking a lot of those advantages, and the fact that, stable diffusion, a lot of these advancements to those bigger problems, which were unsolvable, probably more so, 10 years ago, but are crucial to solve in the next 5 or 10 years.
Got it. And then quickly, we're almost out of time, but Nathan and Sarah, do you want to take us home with what gets you excited?
Yeah, for me broadly, AI for science. I think there's such a huge surface area of stuff you can do, and in biology or in chemistry and physics, where you consider that a lot of experiments are still design or the output of like human design, and so much of the like, I guess like tapestry that we're working with in science is far too complicated to be able to reason with. And you know, in London, like Demis at DeepMind has this like nice way of saying that, you know, AI could be like the native language to explain biology, and I think that's like certainly like true. So I'm just excited about diagnostics, you know, drug discovery, like decoding like some of these grand challenges, and so many amazing things will drop off the tree from those discoveries.
I wish we had a whole panel on bio. Sarah, what about you?
Let's do one.
Yeah, I'd say definitely like new knowledge, right? And science. I would add, you know, there are like two categories we really like. Like one is enabling like democratization of skills. So imagine, you know, Copilot or ChatGPT, like there are a lot of like non-developers using Copilot and ChatGPT to like write code that they don't necessarily fully understand, but allow them to automate parts of their workflow. And I think that's really powerful, right? I'm biased as a former engineer, but like you can do a lot of things if you can write code. Or Midjourney, make me an illustrator, voice generation, cloning, dubbing. I think there's like a lot of things from the creation and reach side that are going to be very cool. And then we talked about like end-to-end work replacement, things like Harvey or Seek. We look at it also from a modality perspective, right? I think like it's not obvious to people who aren't spending a little bit of time in computer science, but the models that are most powerful now, transformers, like you're like text in, text out, but like you can represent a lot of stuff as text, images, code, actions. And I think the question about like what's harder is you know, how do you do diffusion models on proteins, right? That's a really interesting question. So like, I think there are like representation questions that we're going to figure out over the next, hopefully, handful of years. And that'll be a really big unlock. And just because nobody else said it, but I think a lot of people think it, I'd hope this is the first time in like a decade of investing that I can like really imagine a new browser, a new device, a new search engine. And it's like, that's very exciting.
I cannot wait to see where we are next year when people reconvene to see just how much has changed. Thank you so much, panel, for all your insights today.
Thank you.